Let's see what you can do with the dynamic dates feature in ProcessKit. So I have built a simple process for producing a podcast episode. So these are the steps that my team and I would go through to get a single podcast episode all the way from booking the guest through the recording to the post-production to the publishing and the promotion. So all of those steps are mapped out, and I have pre-assigned each of these steps to the right people on my team so that every time we have those assignments automatically going out. Now, the last thing that I need to do is add some dynamic dates to these tasks so that every time we use this process, those due dates can be automatically calculated. So later, when I put this process into action on a project, I'm going to give the project a project end date. And we're going to assume that that's the date that we ultimately want this podcast episode to publish. So let's work our way back from that. So starting with the booking of the guest, we need to start working on this 60 days out from the date that we want to publish the episode. So let's add a start date to be 60 days before the project end date. And we want this to be done and booked by 50 days out. Now, once we have the guest booked, we can prepare the questions. So let's start working on that from the time the booking is due. And let's add a due date of 30 days before project end date, because that is when we're going to be doing the recording. All right, let's skip ahead to the recording of the episode. We always know that we want this to happen 30 days out from the project end date, or from the date that we want to publish the episode. So let's add a due date to that to say 30 days before the project end date. Then once the recording is done, then we are able to kick off a few more of these tasks. But these tasks can't be done until the recording has been completed, like dropping the recorded audio into Dropbox and writing up the show notes. So let's give those dates so dropping the audio in Dropbox starts 1 hour after the recording of the episode is completed, and it's due 1 day later. And we'll do the same on the show notes. And the editing of the audio, let's do the same, and we'll give this one a little bit more lead time. So this one will start 1 day after the recording, and we'll make this one due 7 days later. Now let's skip ahead a little bit more. Okay, so now our process has not only all the details, but also these dynamic date rules. Now let's put this into action in a real project or a real podcast episode, if you will. So I'm going to go over to projects, and I'm going to create a new one using my podcast episode project type that I had created and set up. And we're going to give this episode a title. And let's go to more settings so that we can set that end date. We're going to push that episode date out a bit. We'll push it out to, let's say January 15th. That's the date that we ultimately want this episode to publish. So let's go ahead and set that here. So let's create that. All right, so now we're in that podcast episode, and you can see it has the end date of January 15th. Now let's go over to our tasks for this project, and it has automatically loaded in our podcast production process. It automatically assigned all the right people, and these tasks now have actual due dates that have been calculated based on our rules that we've set. And all of them have been calculated. And you can see that these dates have dynamic dates behind them by looking at that bolt icon over there. Now, some of these were dependent on others, like the recording of the episode. This is going to be due December 16th, or about 30 days out from the publish date, right? But these other tasks here will happen once we complete this. So just as an example, if I were to complete this now, completing that episode now caused these tasks to now have start dates and due dates. So these were calculated based on the time that I actually marked this as complete. Now, when a task has a start date or a due date, if it has people assigned, then those people will receive an email notification to say, hey, this task is ready for you to start, or this task is now due. Now, if for whatever reason we ever wanted to just go in on this particular project or this episode and just change a certain date, we can easily do that. We can just click on any date and change it to something else. This is just going to change it for this project. Or we can even manage the date rules on the date here in this task and either change up the rules, maybe just for this one episode, push it out a little bit further or something like that. Or we can just delete a rule altogether and just, start handling these dates manually. And if we change the rule, we can recalculate, what the new due date should be. All of that is possible using this dynamic dates feature, which really makes it both easy and powerful so that in the future, all we need to do is hit that new project button, and then everything else just falls into place. The steps, the tasks, the people, the due dates, all of it. So that's dynamic due dates in ProcessKit.